Everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I haven't taken any notes today, so I'm just going to be talking off the cuff. I just really wanted to talk to you a bit about my own thoughts on my recent ADHD diagnosis, which I received back in was it February or March, something like that. And I just wanted to talk. Just to disclose really some of my feelings, my thoughts and feelings concerning that diagnosis, because I kind of have a sort of mixed response to it really, and it's funny because when I got diagnosed autistic back in 2008, 2009, that diagnosis was something that made a lot of sense to me. Like, I mean, it's obvious and clear that I'm autistic, right? It's like the diagnosis, in a sense, kind of confirmed what my parents had long suspected, and what I kind of had, was that I had come sort of worked out. Like, so when I got the diagnosis, it made complete sense, like I've never had any problems accepting the diagnosis. It 100%, is obviously, like, basically I don't have any doubts about that diagnosis, if you get what I'm saying. It's like, I'm obviously autistic. There's never been any doubts about that diagnosis. So I've never had any problems accepting it. You hear sometimes of some people getting diagnosed autistic who then doubt their diagnosis. I've never really had that, because it's like something that makes like complete sense to me. Like, there's no other diagnosis that makes as much sense as being autistic, because I guess I'm quite a kind of prototypical case. Like, I have, like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'm quite prototypical. So I've never really had much problems accepting it, and as it fits me, basically. It fits me. At least the kind of like traditional idea of autism fits me. It's kind of changed a bit now with kind of like neurodiversity and these kind of newfangled ideas about autism, which I don't really relate to. But the old school idea of autism really does fit me. Like, the way I really struggle with socialising, the way I really find it hard to make friends, the way I have very fixed, obsessive, narrow preoccupations, not as narrow as they used to be, but I get very fixated on things, sensory, noise issues, just, those sort of things. My rigidities and need to follow my own way, and I'm not good at following other people's dictates, and my struggles with empathy. Yes, it's a thing, despite what they now say about autism, but I do struggle with empathy. It doesn't mean, I struggle with empathy. That doesn't mean I don't care, but it is true, I do struggle with empathy in the sense that I find it very hard to kind of do the people stuff, reciprocity, all of those classic autistic struggles. So I've never had a problem, with my autism diagnosis. Obviously, like, I don't 100% fit the stereotype. Again, I don't think anyone does. No one would 100. It'd be a strange person to 100% fit a stereotype. You literally have to be a kind of cardboard cutout case, wouldn't you? But I'm very prototypical in most ways. But the ADHD diagnosis, I'm not really relating to it in the same way, and I do have slight doubts in my mind as to whether or not whether or not that one does completely fit me. I have doubts in my mind, and the way the diagnosis was done was completely different to the way I had my autism diagnosis, because when I had my autism diagnosis back in 2008, 2009, it was a very lengthy procedure. A clinical nurse specialist who actually trained under Simon Baron-Cohen, believe it or not. He did believe that whole testosterone theory crap, but he was a nice guy other than that. He made a home visit and spoke to myself and my parents, and It was very kind of in-depth. It took a good number of hours. I can't remember exactly how many hours, but it did take, it might have been about 3 hours, 4 hours, I can't remember. It was well in excess of 2 hours anyway, put it that way. It was a long time. It was probably around 3 hours, 4 hours, something like that. And he said, yeah, I can diagnose you. It's obviously autistic, yeah, but I wanted even more than that because I like to have the full thorough stuff, so I had a multidisciplinary assessment as well. So I had the first assessment at the end of 2008, but I had a full multidisciplinary assessment in March of 2009, which basically just confirmed what the clinical nurse specialist had already said, but that was like with a psychiatrist, speech and language therapist, psychologist, and that was at a nearby local hospital. We got a taxi there because I didn't want to go on a train. That's a whole other story. But yeah, it was all very, very thorough and in depth, and meant I could trust the diagnosis along with the fact that obviously, like, it's obvious anyway, I'm autistic. You know what I'm saying? So I've never had a problem with it. But the ADHD diagnosis was different because, first of all, it was done online. It was done online, and it was only how long was it? It was about an hour or just over an hour, and it felt very, very rushed. I didn't really have enough time to go into things. It felt very much like a tick box exercise. Like I was asked these questions, and it didn't really feel like they were really doing an exclusionary diagnosis properly. Like, they asked about my OCD and my anxiety, but it felt to me like they didn't really kind of like look at how some of these issues could also be explained by my autism diagnosis. It felt very rushed, very tick boxy, and I'm not 100% convinced that I am a classic ADHD person. Like, I'm not taking medication. I don't take medication for my OCD, by the way, even though I could do, and for my severe anxiety, that's just a personal choice. I don't actually take any medication. So there's no risks, in that respect, because, like, say if I actually don't have ADHD, there's no risks because I'm not taking medication anyway. But I just don't really feel I can trust the diagnosis, and I'm still not 100% sure that it really fits me. Like, I feel that a lot of these traits can probably be explained by my autism diagnosis, which 100% does fit me. It just feels like the diagnosis was quite kind of rushed and, yeah, tick boxy, and it was a completely different experience from my autism diagnosis, because the autism diagnosis, my parents were involved. It was very thorough. It really felt like a proper kind of workout, neuropsychological workout. This one just felt very kind of rushed and not much better than a self-diagnosis in some ways, which isn't good, is it? Like I say, I'm not saying I don't have it necessarily, but I just feel like I don't really relate to it. Like, I relate to the fact I'm autistic. That feels 100% correct, and something that I'm really, like, obviously am, if that makes sense. Whereas the ADHD diagnosis, I'm struggling to kind of incorporate as part of myself. I'm not entirely sure still whether or not it's really do have it, or whether it's just the fact that I have traits. Because bear in mind that a lot of autistic people do have traits, don't they? It's kind of more, it's almost like a norm for autistic people to have traits of ADHD, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have the full-blown thing. I think, it's certainly possible that I had it more when I was a kid, because I think if you look back to when I was a kid, I was very, very hyper. I was a very, very hyperactive, overactive kid. But was that ADHD, or was that really just part of my autism? You know what I'm saying? Because being autistic in and of itself can make you hyperactive. So this is something I'm still trying to get my head around, and I'm not sure I can really truly relate to it separate to my autism. And so the way I've kind of like, I mean, it doesn't. In some respects, it doesn't really matter, does it? I think I think basically, I do think I am more classically autistic than ADHD. Shall we put it that way? In other words, I do still think it probably is more of a case that the ADHD is just traits more than a classic presentation. But I just feel a little bit annoyed that the diagnosis was so rushed and tick boxy, because if I was taking medication, it could be quite dangerous if I'm not like a classic case. Okay, so I'm going to move over to video number 2 now, just to carry on talking about my thoughts about this. So moving over to video number 2 now.